get issues resolved, that we're not able to see each other face to face and work on things. So yeah, the first thing was thank you very much to all the volunteers and staff for the work that you do in your community, which is my community too and has been for 34 years now. Second, the audit. I want you to learn from my experience in 2016 when the city did an audit of the office. I was just as...
Hi Liz, I'm on a meeting.
Can others mute that aren't speaking?
Would you all mute, everybody, please? Mute your computer or your phone, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I recently discovered by a neighborhood association that taught me that if we all mute, even, I mean, I live by myself, I've got my cat, but he doesn't make a whole lot of noise. So I hadn't been necessarily muting all the time, but it helps with the transmission, aside from not having embarrassing issues come up that you might not want everybody to hear. So I've started muting, although on an iPad, it's really difficult to go back and forth all the time. So I apologize. So where was I? Oh yeah, the audit. So in 2016, when we had an audit of the Office of Neighbourhood Involvement, I was furious. It was not an accurate audit. It didn't, it was written in a way that was really hurtful, when indeed I felt the audit findings were supportive of what we were doing in the Office of Neighbourhood Involvement. Learn from my mistake. When you have an audit, people do not want to hear why the audit is incorrect. What they want you to hear is we acknowledge that mistakes have been made and we're going to do things differently. So I appreciate all of the documentation that has been sent in since the audit came out, and I surely understand the frustration. I just counsel you, the way forward at this point is not to argue about the audit. The way forward right now is what Sylvia and others did after the embezzlement, is to say that something bad happened and we're going to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And I know that that's what the future council is going to be wanting to hear from SWNI is, you know, setting aside is accurate or not. Supposing it is, what are we going to do as an organization that makes it more accountable financially? So let me just stop there and take any comments that you have on that piece of it before I launch into what I think we should do. Does anybody want to vent and tell me how dreadful the audit is?
Thank you, Amanda. That's well said.
I know, as I say, it's so annoying and you feel like your story has not been properly told. It won't get properly told at this point. So you just have to acknowledge that things need to be different and here's what we're going to do to move forward. And so I would recommend don't send in any more justifications from the audit. What we need to do, and I'm saying we because this is my community, we've got a great opportunity here with the new council members. I'm absolutely thrilled with the council that we're going to have next year. Commissioner-elect Rubio, who's going to succeed me, she's been the leader of Latino Network, which is one of the diverse civic leadership partners. So she truly understands the community engagement system. She knows that we created the diversity and civic leadership partners, recognizing that not everybody wants to go to their neighborhood association as their primary source of gathering, and that communities convene on many different themes and reasons for considering yourself part of a particular community. So Carmen comes with that. Commissioner-elect Matt, with him, I had a great conversation with him. I think he has a lot of experience in all nonprofits, not just neighborhood associations, but he's been associated with business associations for the last 10 years. So he's going to have a really great perspective and be very supportive of all kinds of community engagement. Commissioner Ryan is one of the kindest, most thoughtful, most generous people I have ever met, never mind on the city council. He's been in office since September, and I'm just so impressed with him. He comes from the world as well, with All Hands Raised and the school board. He also has school board experience. So you're going to be well served by people who really understand the of running small nonprofit, community engagement. So that's really encouraging. I would think any one of those three would make a great commissioner in charge moving forward. I have advised Mayor Wheeler that I do not believe that he should be in charge of community engagement. Mayors get so busy with things like public safety, as you all know, with the finances, with managing all of the bureaus and all the dynamics and the such. The mayor is just not going to be able to put in the time that I believe is necessary to really devote to, it's going to be 2021. What do we want our community engagement system to look like? How can we make sure that it looks like the diversity in our community? Thomas Lauderdale got of Pink Martini had a celebration today. There was a proclamation for him. And he said, everybody should join their neighborhood association because now more than ever, we need people to convene. And the neighborhood associations generally have not looked like the community that they serve. And so let's all work together to make sure they do. So that's, I think, more, I mean, there's definitely some things that you're going to need to do to say what you're going to do for financial oversight above and beyond what we're already doing. You know, an annual audit is what many nonprofits have. And I think having an audit rather than the public accountants certainly, you know, they've done their due diligence, but having an independent audit periodically, I think is something that should be put on the table. Beyond that, we need to start looking at ways of what can we do differently? You know, one of the reasons that there were many reasons that I stepped down, partly because I've been working for 40 years and I'm tired, but also recognizing that there were 4 white people on the council, that it's really hard to unseat an incumbent, and that, you know, kind Portlanders are not going to run against you, A, if they think you're going to win, and B, if they think you've been doing a fairly decent job. So one of the reasons I stepped down was to create the space for Carmen Rubio and others to run for office. And so as much as I appreciate, and I sincerely appreciate those of you who've also been doing this for 30 years, I would encourage you to be thinking about who can we invite to be on the SWNI board, who would bring a fresh perspective. Who can we get into our neighborhood associations and be leaders in the neighborhood association, like Javier is in mine, which, full disclosure, lives 2 doors down from me. So I'm going to certainly keep in touch with what West Fulton Park is doing. You know, how can we make sure that when we show up to testify, that we do reflect the beauty that's in Southwest? There's so many people in Southwest who are not from the dominant culture, who have different backgrounds and who have experience to share. Laura, you've done just an amazing job. You've been doing it far longer than I have, and you've been such a stalwart. And so I thank you for that, and I honor you for that. And I hope that you will continue to be engaged, because your wisdom experience can really help guide this board and indeed our community in how are we going to do it better. So those are some of the things that I've been thinking about. How can we really do things better? Coincidentally, today I got a proposal from Tatiana in Hillsdale and Maria in Multnomah about a new way to do community engagement, a new way to do outreach. And these are 2 people who were absolutely stalwart during all of the troubles we've had with the challenges to SWNI. Tatiana and Maria showed up and they, you know, said, SWNI is worthy of funding, SWNI is worthy of continuing. And so for them to be stepping up and saying, yes, we are worthy of funding, we are worthy of continuing, and let's do it in a different way. I urge you to listen to what they're proposing, to discuss it in your neighborhood associations, and to see if that could be part of a package. I think the new commissioner in charge is going to be wanting to see a whole host of things. Because let's remember that this is the last year of a 5-year contract. So regardless, there's going to be a huge reevaluation of the community engagement system by the end of 2020. And so we need to be getting ahead of that game and figuring out who is it who needs to do that and how can we do things differently. And with that, I will be quiet and take any questions that you might have.
Okay, I'm looking for blue hands. I don't see, oh, okay, Tatiana, you have a question, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank Commissioner for her many years of service and being so receptive to the grassroots effort and representation of the neighborhoods. And thank you for your interest in our proposal, our initiative as well. What did you think, Commissioner, were the highlights of our initiative that you thought were most noteworthy?
I just like the fact that you're putting it on the table, Tatiana, that you're going to have the discussions about how to, and I realize that most of you haven't seen this, so I know that it will get circulated and have more discussion on it next time, hopefully. And discussions in your neighborhood. It's a starting point. It's let's think about how we do things differently. And that's what I was most excited about it. It's taking a relatively new leader who has the support of the leaders in Hillsdale who've been doing this for a very long time, who's looking at how can we expand our own horizons as well as the horizons for everybody else. You know, truly engages our community and especially the most vulnerable people in our community.
Yes, and it would be our effort to engage a broad spectrum of those who are make Portland so diverse today.
And it's really creating a process, and we know that you can't skip process steps.
No,
that it's not up to this board to. It's certainly up to the board to be thinking of some of the financial safeguards that we're going to add to make sure that everybody's satisfied we're taking care of taxpayers' money wisely. But it's up to the community to be engaged in a process to decide what does everybody want their community to look like and how do they want to get there. It's not up to this board to be saying we're going to do it in a particular way. It's going to be establishing a process.
Yes.
Okay, Maria, Team I has a question for you, and then I have a question for you too. Fritz, go ahead, Maria.
Hi, Commissioner. Thank you. As the rest of us are greatly appreciative for everything that you've done on behalf of the community. My question is this: you did say that you don't think the mayor should be the commissioner in charge of neighborhoods, but who would you recommend to the mayor to assign that bureau to?
I think any one of the three new people would be outstanding. And I think, you know, he doesn't always take my advice. So there's that. And if he decides that he wants to keep it, then I'm sure that we can make it work. But what you really need is somebody who doesn't have 6 or 7 different bureaus, somebody who's going to really devote the time to going to neighborhood meetings, to listening to the community, to you know, maybe having a neighborhood summit, planning a summit, which we haven't had for a long time. That takes a lot of work for both the staff and the commissioner. And so you want somebody who's going to be willing to come and meet with you personally and get to know you, as I know that you in Multnomah invited Commissioner-elect Rubio to come and get to know you. You know, that we're about relationships in Portland, and you need a member of, you need a commissioner in charge who's going to be able to spend the time to establish relationships.
Yeah. In your conversations with the commissioners, is there one or more that have said they want that in their portfolio?
I believe the Commissioner-elect Maps has, and there was some concern that he might have some baggage from having been within the Bureau. I was not, I was worried about that myself until I talked with him, and I was really pleased. I think he is really grounded. I don't think he is holding grudges. I think he's just aware of what some of the challenges would be. As I say, Commissioner Ryan has had a lot of experience in different parts of the city with being on the school board and with nonprofits and with financial management of nonprofits. So he would be another good choice. And then Commissioner-elect Rubio, having been in the system with the Latino Network, she knows a lot about it as well. So that's going to be the advantage next year, is you're going to have those three and Mayor Wheeler, who's now heard more about neighborhood involvement than he probably ever wanted to. who really understand how it works. And indeed, Commissioner Hardesty, with a different perspective, with Oregon Action and with some of the groups that she's involved in, she brings in the, and she actually has been involved in the East Portland Action Plan and in her neighborhood association. So, we've got a group of people who understand that we do good stuff in the neighborhood system and we need to keep doing it.
I think there are two more people that would like to ask you a question, Amanda, before I ask mine. Mike Lindman, you had your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
Yes, I agree with you, Commissioner Fritz, that we shouldn't be talking so much about the concerns of how the audit was presented. And I do agree that we need a change. My concern is that there's been this kind of unrelenting campaign to basically label us as completely unwelcoming, which is completely at odds with everything that I've ever experienced with the neighborhood associations. And in trying to expand our reach to the community, how would you suggest going about trying to combat what has basically been years of negative campaigning against us? You
can't, so don't try. So I think what we have to do is show that we are going to do things differently. I don't, you can't just say we're welcoming because people are not going to believe it. If that's not what they have in their core belief system, it doesn't matter how much evidence you give them. So, let's be thinking about how could we do things differently. Know that you've had your ground rules that you gave at the beginning of the meeting, and I understand why that has been necessary. We didn't used to do things quite so formally, and maybe we could be more welcoming if we didn't have to formally adopt the agenda. If some of the groups that I've been asked have just been like, is there any objection to anything on the agenda, or would anybody like to add anything? Hearing none, this is what we're going to do. So there could be ways that we could, while still understanding Robert's Rules of Order, think about how could we be more, how could somebody who doesn't know Robert's rules figure out how to navigate a meeting? How can we make sure that everybody feels like they really are welcome when they show up, and that if we ask them, why did you come tonight, and they bring up an issue, we have to be really open to figuring out, is that something that we could work on? Is it something that we've worked on in the past? How can we validate the person who's bringing a concern at the same time as having some limitations on what can and cannot be done? So really thinking about your active listening skills, about your validation skills of acknowledging when people are bringing new issues to the table that you may not agree with. I'm going to be writing an article for the SWNI newsletter for January, and it's kind of in some ways directed at the turmoil within the community of people arguing and being very adversarial. We need to find ways to get beyond being adversarial, and if that means turning the other cheek and being kind when somebody is being unkind, then maybe that's what we have to do, because fighting back doesn't help.
There's one other person who has a question for you, but I guess this is my question for you before I recognize Murphy. SWNI, when I first came to it, I thought was just a board of 17 neighborhoods and 3 business associations. And it took me about 2 years to understand how the whole process worked. And then it's taken me 4 years to actually really get to know it. But we have at least 42 partnerships with other community-based groups, which was the work of previous boards, as well as their executive director, to not be just geographically based, but to be welcoming and to help amplify those voices with those other groups who might be single issues or might be multiple issues, but to help them get their voices out heard, and to provide information through the newsletter and other notices that we send so that people can participate, listen, go to their events, listen to their concerns to see if SWNI can help. But you're talking about doing things a little differently. And so I guess I'm going to ask you, given that we are about 20 different neighborhood groups plus 42 partnerships, what are your ideas about doing things differently? Because I've always thought of SWNI as welcoming, but you're saying that there may be other ways to do it. What idea would you suggest?
I think that's a good question for us all to be asking ourselves, and also to be open to having input. So for instance, from the 42 partner groups, what would they like to see happen that would make that would highlight the work that they're doing? What could we do to highlight the work that they are doing? I really enjoyed getting the paper newsletter. I confess that I don't read the online version as much, just because I'm sitting at the computer all day. So I hope that we can, I do believe that we'll get funding in the new year, fairly shortly in the new year. And one of the things that I, as a Southwest resident, would appreciate is getting back to the paper newsletter, because that's going to be something that I'm going to continue to enjoy. But for instance, having a front page article about one of the groups that we help support in their own words, maybe thinking about the newsletter differently, and instead of having quite so much of it devoted to the neighborhood meetings. I know that many of my staff and I really enjoy reading about the neighborhood meetings to see what's going on. But let's think about, how much proportionally, how much are we allocating to that versus elevating the voice? And those are just, I don't have it. That's not a recommendation even. It's just a question that we should be asking ourselves is, how are we making sure that people in the general community feel that their voices are heard?
That's very helpful. Thank you. Murphy, you're the next person for a question for the commissioner.
Hi, Amanda, thanks very much for coming to see. Oh, I'm still muted. Am I? No, I'm not. Okay. Thanks very much for coming to see us, and shall I say goodbye, except I expect I'll see you around the park some. At any rate, I'm wondering, and part of this probably depends on who the new commissioner for neighborhood associations is going to be. But do you have any thoughts or suggestions as to how our neighborhood associations, our subcommittees, our SWNI, how can we support, how can we help, or how can we lead the new commissioner to be able to support us? Do you have thoughts about that? Thanks.
You've got to establish relationships and make friends, right? So just as you would if a new neighbor moved in on your block, you've got to be reaching out and say, oh, we're so excited that you are the commissioner in charge of neighborhood involvement, regardless of who it is and regardless of whether you actually are excited or not. You've got to do what Portland is a fairly large city that's based on relationships. So you invite them, to come and chat with you. You don't snow them with all kinds of difficult questions at the very first meeting. You take some time to, let them know some of the things that you're excited about, as well as challenged by, some of the things you like about your neighborhood. When we actually can get out and meet people again, it'll be nice. You could invite them to your neighborhood park. In fact, you could probably do that, except for the horrible weather. You could do that in a distanced and COVID safe way. As soon as it's, there's going to be a nice day. The other thing to do is always respect the staff, just like that our staff are absolutely fantastic. They will pick their staff, and it's the staff who do much of the work. So getting to know whoever is either the policy director, some of them just have one policy director for everything, or some of them will do what I have done, which is have a liaison. You want to get to know that person, because you can wait 2 months to get an appointment to come in for a half hour with me. You can get an appointment with one of my staff, you have been, until they're all leaving me now. You can get an appointment with a staff member and have an hour-long conversation. And then they come to me and they say, this neighborhood wants this and I think we should do it. And I'm pretty much like, all right, fair enough, let's do it. Because I've learned to trust them. So always respect the staff and take the time to get to know them as well and see them as your allies. They won't always give you what you want, but you want to be able to, again, establish that relationship so that you can understand each other even if you don't always agree.
Right, thank you. And we have one last question that we have for you, and then I think we'll have to move on. Diane Victoria has a question.
Hi, I have a question slash comment because one of the things you had talked about is being, looking to the future to be more inclusive and what can we do? And as a person who's relatively new to this level of SWNI, just an example, clear, it's not a criticism, it's just an observation as a new person coming in and quietly listening or reading the email things that have been going back and forth. You hear a lot of people, and I understand why they're saying it, but I've been on this board or involved with this board for 20 years. I've been on this board or president or whatever officer of the board for 15 years. Well, for those of us who are new people coming in, that can be very, very intimidating. Like, okay, is there even a spot here for me? Because I've just seen, half a dozen people or more talk about how they've been on this board for a very long time. And I think, I don't want to sound to sound criticizing, because I think it's great that these people are involved in their community, but it's one of those things that until you take a step back and look at it, you can maybe not see how you clearly then have one theme that's going for 20 years that doesn't have any new people coming in. So I'm wanting people to just kind of maybe think like what you were saying, like, okay, what can we do to do better? How can we bring in new people? I'll just give you an example. In my neighborhood, I sit in a corner, so I essentially have 5 houses around me, 5 neighbors. Since COVID started, all but 4 of them have sold. None of the new people moving in are over 40. One of them's 26 and he joined our local board. But it made me again realize that if I have a board of a lot of retired age people who say they've been on the board for 20 years, it can be very intimidating to a new person coming into the neighborhood to see a spot for them and how they can be in. So I think it's up to us to make sure to say, we want more people, we want more voices, we want more of those young voices on the board to give that diversity. So that was sort of kind of off of what you were saying. Thank you, Amanda Fritz.
Thank you, Dan. That's really courageous of you to say that, because I know you meant it. You mean it in kindness. You did. That was not in any way a criticism. Just like I, thanks people for their long time service, and we certainly need people who have the historical perspective. I'm now 12 years. I'm the only person who's served on the council for more than 4 years. So I'm trying to mind myself in terms of being the boring old person who is constantly saying, well, we've already done that, or here's what we did back in the good old days, versus actually it's sometimes helpful to say, yeah, we actually tried that and here's why it didn't work, and we so here's some information for you. So I appreciate that you kind of have echoed my thinking. Is each of us has to think about how are we welcoming, how are we conducting ourselves, what are we doing, and how are we making space for people who want to serve. I mean, I've been absolutely thrilled going around the neighborhood associations. There's people like yourself who are just stepping up and wanting to do things differently. And unless we move and change with the times, we're going to become irrelevant. We will be that boring old organization that nobody will do. So, and we don't want that. We need both. And there's ways to serve. I'm going to be living in Portland probably for the rest of my life. So I'm not going anywhere, and I will occasionally be, giving advice, or I'll certainly be available to people if they want to be in touch. My home email address is amandafritzrn@aol.com, and you are very welcome to help me survive what I'm afraid is going to be a very boring couple of months next year when I can't do anything, and I won't have all of the emails from my city staff. So, I guess what I'm saying is, we don't have to go away because we're experienced and we've got a lot to offer. What we can do is offer it in a different way, and as mentors to others. I appreciate you as well. I've offered to mentor and to guide some folks who've been not at all interested in that. Like, I know exactly what's right. Don't tell me what to do, you boring old person. And then Commissioner Ryan, as I said, he's so open to, you've been doing this for a while. I want to know, could I ask you a question about this? I like being asked my opinion. It's really nice when somebody does what I think they should do, but I do enjoy participating in a different way, and I'm planning to continue to do that. So thank you for raising that. I know you have to get on, Leslie. Let me just say that you're all invited to my retirement ceremony. It's tomorrow at 5 o'clock. It's on Zoom, of course. I'm going to be attempting to do a Zoom meeting with about probably 200 people on my iPad. So that's going to be interesting. We also have a number of items on the council agenda tomorrow afternoon, starting at 2. One is a tribal recognition and a land acknowledgement that my staff and I have been working on for 2 years. And Laura, I think you might be interested in watching how that goes. We've had so much good input from the tribal nation leaders, and we're really working to, there's a number of organizations who've been doing land acknowledgements at the beginning of meetings, and Laura John, our tribal relations director, has asked them not to do that, because if you acknowledge in a way that doesn't actually respect the Indigenous peoples and the First Nations, if you miss people and nations out that need to be recognized, it seems very tokenizing. So we're not yet ready with our land acknowledgement. We have, here's a concept, paid Indigenous people to do the research and to write the land acknowledgement that will be coming next year. So, but what we're doing tomorrow is a number of action items, because you can do the talk, but you have to walk the walk. And in this particular case, we're going to do the walking before we do the talking about the land acknowledgement. So I'm pretty excited about that, and just so many things that you, the Southwest community, and I have been able to accomplish. And a lot of it has been things that we've accomplished that have benefited the rest of the city. The work that the SWNI Parks Committee did and has done and continues to do that benefits the people in East Portland, who likewise have not enough parks and not enough services. The work that we've done on transportation with sidewalks and streets not being paved. We in Southwest, some of us have the luxury and the privilege of being able to contribute our time and talents and treasure to get things done for people who perhaps don't. And so that's, again, part of why the neighborhood system is so fun. If you want to come to my retirement event, please contact Ms. Kwan on my staff, and she'll be happy to send you the link.
Amanda, we want to thank you for taking the time and addressing this neighborhood in particular in the way that you have. It means a great deal. Up until about 15 months ago, this was a very cordial kind of organization, and a lot of work that was done because people did know each other, or if they were new people, mentored, brought in, and were part of what was going on. And I know that it is our intent to become a more congenial group that works together. And I think they're very capable of making changes in terms of how we do things. This is a very creative group. So, and also I'm very, very pleased to hear that you made it available for mentoring, ideas, thoughts, because you have a lot of experience, and it's very important to each of us to be able to have ideas, options about how to do something well, regardless of whether we've been with the board for a long time or whether brand new to the board. Your suggested ideas are much appreciated. And thank you very much for coming this evening.
Well, thank you, Leslie. Just one final thought, and that is, I also know how things operate inside City Hall and some of the dynamics there. So if you want to run by me any kind of plans or letters, or just what you're going to as next steps, I can perhaps give some input onto, yeah, that's going to fly, or no, that's going to kind of rub people up the wrong way. So
that would be invaluable.
Yeah.
Invaluable.
Happy to help. I'll leave you to the rest of your agenda. Thank you so much, everybody. Happy holidays, everybody. I hope to see some of you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. Well, that was very very helpful and meaningful to all of us, I think. I think we all heard that what she said, and I think we should follow her lead. And I'm confident you all can do it. I have a lot of confidence in you.
Refreshing.
Yes, very refreshing. We have some deadlines we have to meet. So despite our suggestion that we do things differently, I'd like to try at least to get through some of the things that we have on the agenda tonight, because otherwise we might be in violation of our bylaws. So the next item on the agenda, we have 2 sets of minutes to approve. We have the first set is November 18th. And I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to approve these minutes. And then if there are corrections or revisions, we'll address those.
Leslie, this is Janet. I think I'm gonna move to table the November 18th minutes because Katie and I are still kind of exchanging emails, and I want to make sure that we get them correct. So I would just suggest that we get our corrections pulled together and approve those in January. So if there's a second to the motion to table. November 18th.
Second. Katie seconds.
Katie seconded. Thank you, Katie.
All right.
And then we'll talk. We didn't get a chance to talk today. So Katie, we'll talk and look things over on those. So go ahead,
We'll just voice vote on this. All in favor of tabling the November 18 minutes until January, say aye.
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 And waiting is great too. Thank you. Any abstentions? I don't see or hear anything. Any?
I'll abstain.
Javier?
Yeah, I'll abstain.
Okay, Javier's going to abstain.
Okay.
And then any no votes? Okay, all right.
Great.
The
Great.
motion
So-
to table has been passed by the majority of people here. And we can move on to the second set of minutes, which is November 30th.
Move to approve.
I second.
Okay, Katie and Tatiana. All right. Does anybody have any revisions? Please raise your blue hands just so I can see it if you do. Or wave your hand in front of your face so I can see you. I don't see any blue hands. All right. I don't see any hands in front of anybody.
I thought they were very good minutes.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. I'm going to do the same thing again and take a voice vote. All in favor of approving the November 30th minutes, say aye.
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 Opposed? Anybody opposed to the minutes? Do we have any abstentions for people that weren't here? Okay, we have Catherine's an abstention.
I'm abstaining also, Rob Lennox.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rob. Okay, we have 2 abstentions. Then I would say that the minutes have been approved by a majority of the people here, and we'll move on to the next part.
Oh, actually, I just had one little update on the minutes, which
Yes,
is following. Thank you for the approvals. And over the course of the last couple of months, it's been really difficult oftentimes because some of us have to leave meetings in the midst of Zoom, or we need to join late and leave early, all those kinds of things. So both Jackie and Katie have suggested that we record all the votes in terms of board members' names, so that when we have an approval, say if 20 people approve something, last names would be listed so we'll know who is present for that vote. We would list the noes and the abstentions. So minutes will look a little bit different. There'll be a few more names listed, but I don't think it'll make a drastic change. And most people read their minutes online. So hopefully we won't have to get reams and reams of paper around it, but we're ready to implement that in January. So any questions on that? Does that seem?
and let me check and see. I don't see any questions yet. Could I just paraphrase that for a second, Janet? What you're
Yes.
suggesting is that on every motion, we actually do a roll call to determine who's actually there at the time of the motion and how they vote. So instead of doing what we did tonight, which is do we move to approve and everybody says aye or abstains, you're suggesting that every single motion that the
No,
board.
actually, no, I think the intent, and Jackie and Katie, please correct me if I get this wrong, would be that where we have issues that are more divided, and we have people who are interested in voting no or yes or abstentions, that we try to record those accurately. For simple things that are basically we can do by voice vote, I don't think that, I'll obviously put the abstentions down for the folks who weren't at the meeting. But in general, it would be more when we have a divided discussion and a motion and then a vote. So that would be my recommendation. But Jackie, Katie, please speak up if you think differently.
I might want to say.
Comments, raise your blue hand if you have comments. I'm looking for blue hands. Okay, Katie, go ahead.
Yes, good idea, Janet. There is no reason to have a calling of the roll for either an approval of meeting minutes or things like that. I completely agree with you and understand.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Seeing no other hands at this
There are
moment.
other hands.
All right, wait. Okay, I see Don Baack. Don, you're first on the list. What would you like?
Yes, I timed ourselves. We take 3 to 4 minutes every time we do a roll call vote. And I, with a really contentious issue, I find it's very appropriate, but I find it's really tedious to sit around waiting. We've got a lot of things to talk about. We can spend that time a lot more effectively and a lot more creatively if we dispensed with the on and on roll calls, unless it's really a contentious issue. So what I'd like to suggest is you do a vote by voice, and then if there's a need to call for a division of the House, that person raises the division of the House, and we actually do a roll call. That'll save us about 3 to 4 minutes on every roll call we do.
Okay, I see that Patty would like to comment. Go ahead, Patty.
Am I muted?
No, you're not. We can hear you. Well, it looks like you're muted on the screen, but I thought I could hear you.
Let me see. How about now?
Now you're unmuted, Patty.
Okay, I was actually trying to get my hand down, but my question really was, how is this different from what we've already been doing? Because it seems like we're doing what's being proposed. So I don't understand the distinction.
Well,
Janet,
everyone would be listed. Everyone, when we do basically a roll call vote, every name would be listed for all the board members present. And it is, as people kind of come in and out, you'll see the numbers vary, and oftentimes you'll see in the minutes where I said, this person joined late, or this person had to leave at this particular time. So there wouldn't be that content in the minutes. Names would just be simply listed on the votes. So I think it'll be a little bit simpler in terms of the reading of the minutes.
Okay, I see Rob Lennox's hand is up. Rob, do you want to comment?
If this is approved, I might suggest that you put initials in the top next to everybody's names and then put initials as the vote, so that keep the limits of the minutes down.
I'm not sure what you're saying. I'm not following you. Could you explain again?
So at the top of every minute, we have the attendees. You could add initials next to the attendees. And then on each vote, you don't have to list their whole name. You could just list the initials, which would keep the length of the minutes shorter. So.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think
food for thought. Yeah, we'll certainly think about all the ideas. People are suggesting good ideas. I want to kind of leave this topic now because I know the rest of the agenda is very intense.
I'm going to let Tony make his comment, then we'll move on.
Well, I thought I understood what was happening, and then I got confused. I'm kind of with Don that unless we have a reason to have a full accounting of the votes, is that what you're saying, Janet? Only when it's contentious, or for every vote because
Right.
We don't know who's going to be here?
Well, I would say only when it's typically kind of contentious, but there are times if you are leaving the meeting, what's really helpful is just to kind of open, basically raise your hand and ask for acknowledgement that you've got to leave the meeting, or if you enter late, it's good to announce yourself. So that would be helpful in terms of knowing who's actually in attendance at the meeting.
Okay.
Jackie, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just want to speak to the reason we're having this conversation in the first place. Many of our meetings have been going beyond 9 o'clock. And so I can only stay until 9. So I got to thinking, after 9 o'clock, there's no guarantee that everybody at the beginning of the meeting is there. So it's a way of, so particularly motions that are done late in the evening, identifying, it's to help who was actually still remaining in the meeting.
That makes sense. Thank you. And we'll take all these comments and try to put it on the agenda for the next executive committee meeting and see if we can sort out an approach and then put it before the board at the next meeting. Thank you, all of you, for commenting on that. It's very helpful.
Thank you.
The second thing on the list under the President's report is the Charter Advisory Committee. We are very fortunate. There's a woman up in the Swirl neighborhood who's been appointed to the Charter Advisory Committee. Her name is Melanie Billings-Young. Some of you may have met her in different situations, but she's on the Charter Advisory Committee, and she wrote Sylvia and I and said, I would like to share information with your network about what's going on in the advisory committee and let them know when meetings are held and some of the issues that are there. So it seemed like a really good idea because I don't know how many of us know who's a person on the advisory committee, but she's in our neighborhoods. And I wanted to congratulate her that she's been appointed to that committee. And then it sounds like she has every intent to try to keep us front and center on those issues which have citywide implications. And she's willing to share that information with SWNI. So that was the second thing I wanted to share with you. And then the third thing is donations and pledges continue to come in. We'll talk about the actual numbers through Teddy's presentation under financial reports. So I'm not going to talk about it, but I want to thank everybody who's done it and continues to do it because it's made the difference between actually laying people off or actually keeping staff at work and helping all of us because that's their mission. The last thing is Janet Hawkins is chair of our personnel committee, and she's doing between 4 and 6 sets of minutes every month, as well as chairing her own neighborhood group. And so she's asked to be relieved of the job of chairing the personnel committee. And the executive committee would like to suggest that you approve Sam Pearson to replace her in the coming months, because there's a lot of personnel committee work that's going to come out in this coming year as we move forward. And Janet has advised us that given the challenges in being a very good secretary, that she would like to step down. So do I have a motion to approve Sam Pearson as chair of the personnel committee?
I so move.
Thank you, Tatiana. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, okay. Janet, do you know who that is?
George.
Oh, George. Oh, thank you, George. I can see you. I just didn't see your mouth move.
Yeah, well
All
done.
right. All right. All in favor of appointing Sam Pearson to replace Janet as chair of the personnel committee, say aye.
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 Are there people that are opposed? I'll look for hands just in case. Okay, I don't see any hands. Is there anybody that wants to abstain from this vote?
All
right.
abstain. Sorry.
Beg your pardon?
I'll abstain, Diane Victoria.
Okay, all right, Diane, thank
I'm
you.
not sure I understand it also. I'll just abstain.
Well, I'll go back for a minute and explain. We have a personnel committee that is authorized under our bylaws to be convened from time to time. And it comes into existence, members are appointed to it, and then it does its work, and then it goes out of existence. And we appointed a personnel committee last year, and they did a huge amount of work on revising and updating all of our personnel policies. But then with the suspension of our funds, that effort was put aside so that we could work on document production for the city and many of the other things that came up. So the person who chairs it has people that are all ready to go. They've already got a draft of changes to the personnel committee ready to come out to all the board members and to give you time in which to review those personnel policies and to ask questions about them. And so after the first of the year, that work will begin again. And that's what it's about. Diane, do you have other questions?
No, I just didn't know what that personnel committee was, so that's why I thought I should abstain, but now it makes more sense. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you're welcome. And also, I don't think there are no dumb questions when it comes to where we are. As I say, it took me 2 years just to sort of learn the general parameters of SWNI. Now I'm 4 years into it and know a lot more. And for somebody who's just sort of joined it, it's very confusing. So feel free to ask any questions you want, any of you, anytime, and we'll try to answer them. All right.
So Diane, just to clarify, can I ask, so you're a yes for Sam's appointment?
Yeah, sure, that would be
Okay,
fine.
great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Sorry.
you. Thank you. That's okay. Thank you.
All right. Then
Point of information,
yes, Katie.
should the email that I sent to the chair of the personnel committee that went unanswered be forwarded to Sam to be answered?
Janet, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I think that's fine to send that to Sam. I think the committee has not met yet, so for a couple of months, so maybe they could put that on their agenda to respond to.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to hear from our first vice president, which is Steve Lennox. Don, yes?
Yes, I just want to thank Janet for her service. I mean, this is the changes that they've had to do in this committee in the last 6 months have been huge relative to normal committee operations. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Don. And Sam is inheriting great committee members. Mary Ann Fitzgerald and Kim Silverman have been excellent committee members. So thumbs up for Sam taking this on. Thank you, Sam.
All right. Thank you, Don. And I would echo what you said and more because I got to look at the just a very cursory glance at all the work that the Personnel Committee had done under Janet's guidance and with the work that the other two members did, and it's quite impressive. And I think you'll find that when you all get to look at those policies as they come out after the first of the year. Okay, the next person on the agenda is our first vice president, Steve Molyneux.
Yeah, okay, Legal Affairs Committee. It's fairly quiet there. The lawsuit filed by Shannon Hiller-Webb and Marie Tybal is proceeding through the legal process. It's now in discovery, and a request for documents has been filed and has been answered by our attorney. And that was on the 14th of December. Okay, so that's everything I have to say about legal affairs. Also wanted to mention that for those of you who are here and those in your neighborhoods as well, who have supported SWNI with letters and emails to the city council, thank you. And I think Sylvia has some really nice information about that in her executive director's reports. Those have been really fantastic letters. We dodged a bullet with Commissioner Daly's proposal to move SWNI's funding and responsibilities to Sewell. But as Commissioner Fritz mentioned, that motion was tabled, so it won't be considered, I don't believe, and then the funding will be considered again in the next year. So that means while we dodge that bullet, we are not out of the woods. We have to, as Commissioner Fritz suggested, build our relationships with the new city council. If they're any new director or a new commissioner in charge of civic life and so forth. And we also hope that you'll continue to let the council know about your positive thoughts about SWNI. That's a necessary thing, because there are people I'm sure that out there that are letting them know their opposition as well. So so let's make sure they hear the folks that are supportive of SWNI. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Our next report is from our second vice president, and Sam, you're going to report later on the grievance committee matters for the benefit of the board. Do you have anything as second vice president besides those grievance matters that you want to bring to the attention of the board? Sam?
Gotta unmute.
Okay.
Not at this time. There isn't anything that I want to bring forward other than to say that the dispute resolution committees have done wonderful on the first grievance, and that the second group on the dispute resolution committee has been looking at all the paperwork and is in the process of meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. Then we're going to move on to have Teddy present the financial information. There's two things quickly I want to say. Scott, I know you called me and I haven't returned your call yet, but it's on my list and I apologize for not calling you and returning your call within a reasonable period of time. And then the second thing is that Tatiana wants to bring something to our attention later. So I'm going to put her request at the end of the agenda. We'll see where we are because we do have to deal with the grievances today as well as financial reports. So that's a heads up that there is one additional thing that may be put before you at the end of the evening. So Teddy, do you want to do start with the financial reports?
Sure.
What would you like?
Let's go with the income statement. Is someone putting it up?
Yeah. Hold on just a second.
Actually, if you want financials put up, you'll have to ask Sylvia to put them up for us. She's got them.
Can you see them?
Yes, actually, so let's start with the summary I sent you.
Okay.
And
When I had up, let's see.
sorry, I couldn't see your screen. So
Okay.
all right, so it's a short summary. Quick highlights being we've got for the month of November, we received about 15.5 grand in donations. That's 89 donors, including individual and groups. And our year-to-date contributions, about 25.5 grand. And we'd like to say thank you again for all those supporters, those on the boards and those in your local neighborhood associations. And based on our current financials, we Finance Committee will be recommending that we leave employees at 60% of full payroll for January. If you remember, we voted to keep December at 60%, and now we would be recommending that we continue that 60% into January. And are there any questions?
Okay, Don Baack, you have your hand up. Don Baack, did you have a question?
I got to unmute. Sorry. Where is the funding, the accounts payable for the attorney? I'm looking at the date statement. I'm just looking at your summary, and it says that there's accounts payable here someplace.
Well, he hasn't gotten to that.
Native plants.
The native plants.
We got accounts payable as well.
Don, you're cutting in and out. We're really sorry.
He's talking about the line accounts payable, including 4,034 for native plants. And I believe he asked where's that funding coming from?
No, where is the attorney fees?
Attorney fees.
Oh. So I think we should put up the financial.
Right.
So this is attorney's fees here. Plus,
Plus the other account payable.
right.
So wait a minute. I see accounts payable 7.7, and I saw a number before for plants for 4 something. Does the 7 include the 4?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to check to see if there are any other questions so far. Sorry, just a second. Okay, I see Katie Daly has her hand up. Katie, go
Yes,
ahead.
thank you, Leslie. Teddy, does the accounts payable also hold the accrued rent payable?
Don't.
No,
No.
we're going to add that next month.
Okay. And the, oh, never mind, it'll be the income statement. Sorry.
Can you go back to the top, please? I lost track of what these columns mean. Thank you.
All right. So just going through the balance sheet since we're already here. Was that another question? All right.
I don't see, I think that was a cough. I don't see any hands.
Okay. All right, let's keep going. We've touched on any questions on this?
What is SWNI using credit cards for?
This is Javier. Sylvia, do you want to answer that question?
Yes, so we pay credit cards for like the monthly storage facility that has all of our event equipment in it. We'll pay credit card for the monthly fee for Issue, which is doing the current news publication, the electronic, it's like the software. We'll use it to pay for the neighborhood state and corporation fee or the Department of Charitable Justice, things that have to be paid online. So, and there's a full breakdown that the Finance Committee gets, but I can always give it to you if you want, if you're interested.
You answered my question, online stuff. Yep,
Yes.
Gotcha. Perfect.
All right. No other questions? Go ahead, Teddy.
All right, let's pull up the profit loss statement.
Okay. This is the combined. You want just operations?
No, this is fine. All right, as you can see, income is primarily the donations we've received since we've lost our funding from Civic Life.
Excuse me, Teddy, before you move past it, what is the 4,075 expense of donations?
You want to speak to that, Sylvia?
I don't.
The top line on the donations line.
Is it PayPal fees?
No.
No.
I confess to surprise.
I think that, let me look at operations because I think that that could be for everyone, but let's look at operations. Which that does not show up. So that might be total PayPal, but I will check into that.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
Yes, go ahead, Javier.
This is Javier.
Javier.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Javi,
Sorry.
you're fine.
I'll
fine.
get there. I'll get there.
You're good there. Teddy, can you explain to me what reimbursement income is?
So he's talking about the miscellaneous income on the under miscellaneous income.
Right.
Yes, Teddy, can you explain to me what that is, please, sir?
Well, let's have Sylvia touch on it because.
Well, so usually that is something that we've paid for, but it is out of somebody else, so they're reimbursing us. And I think that was a donation that was given. So again, I will double check it. I'm sorry, I just can't remember at the moment.
Well, it's watershed, remember?
It could be, but I have a memory that it's something else. Ugh. It's not in my head though.
Can you do a quick overview for everybody about, you know, we get 4 different streams of income, and then we get reimbursed for certain incomes. Can you talk about the when we're likely to get reimbursed by a city bureau or somebody else where we might have advanced funds and we're getting reimbursed for it? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, for example, in the payables, we still have a grant with Bureau of Environmental Services to do the Southwest 50th Street project, right? And so that's going to be on your on the report 1 here under Watershed Resource Center. So we will get an invoice from like Sound Plant, Native Plants. Then we submit it to the Bureau of Environmental Service. They pay us, and then we pay our contractor. So some of that is what this is here. And it's kind of tiny. That was at 4,000. This is the professional fees there, the 2,290 was what I explained when we redid this. It was authorized payment was like November 30th, right after Thanksgiving, but the bank didn't take it out to send it until December 2nd. And then it has not been cashed yet. But when we reconciled, we were missing this figure here. It somehow got over into December, but it was accrued in November. So that's why it's on the payables. This figure here, this negative figure here for vacation accruals, that's how much we used this month. And then you'll see on the balance sheet shows you what the current accrual rate is for vacation. 69.33.90. So whenever there's a negative there, you want to kind of pay attention to what that is.
Okay, shall we move on, Teddy?
Yeah, let's move on. All right, unless there's any other questions.
Okay, Katie Daly's got a question.
Sorry about this. When Don asked the question about the accounts payable of what was it, 7,721, and you said that was legal expenses
Okay.
that were, I guess I'm confused.
Here's the list. You can total it.
Oh.
Okay. So there was $4,034 for Sound Native Plants. That's the BES that we just talked about.
Okay.
There was the 1,250 that we paid out for the Beaver Festival. So we issued again that check right after Thanksgiving, and it didn't get sent out until December. So it's accrued under November for 1,250. And then there was a phone bill, whoops, of $146.81. And what we added in there was the 2,290 for the attorney fee for Simon.
The
So that's
deferred
the
to,
total
okay.
budget.
That sums, thank you.
Yes.
And also just to, this can be confusing, so let me make it very clear. Even though we wrote a check to Simon, after we wrote a check to Simon, he decided not to cash it. He would wait to get paid till after our funding was returned to us. So it's in accounts payable, but he is not cashing it until he sees that we get our funding back and we actually have money to pay it.
Oh, please, I just remembered. The $1,135, see under benefits as an here. This is what we paid out for Eric's health insurance, and we were reimbursed by Neighbors West Northwest. That's the reimbursable income.
Awesome. Thank you, Sylvia.
Yes. I knew it was in my brain somewhere.
Oh. All right, let me check and see if there are any other questions so far. Don, you have your hand up again.
I do. And this may, if you want to do this another time to talk about, you're certainly welcome to. But I think we need to have our finance committee and some of us that are used to dealing with the city are asked for the reimbursement and or money going forward, because they're going to be doing this the first of the year. We got to have our ducks lined up in terms of what we want to ask for and have agreement among ourselves for what reasonable and what we think can be done. And that laid out in clear detail without, not a lot of numbers. It's got to be pretty simple, A, B, C, D, that people can understand.
Very good idea, Don, and we will definitely be working on that over Christmas.
I would like to review that before it goes forward.
Well, we have no idea when they're going to ask for it, so we'll work on it. And the next board meeting is on the 27th of January. However, having said that, we have another probably special meeting to look at the recommendations from the Second Grievance Committee, and we could take up this issue at that time, so long as they haven't asked for it beforehand.
The point I'm trying to really say is have this like before the end of the year in hand, or knowing what we've got to do to change it if we want to, because this is something that a lot of us may have different opinions on what we should or shouldn't ask for. We get to the deadline, we're not going to be able to really do anything about it other than just take what we've got done. We're going to have good justification for the pieces that we're asking for. And I think it really needs a lot of attention, because it's going to mean thousands of dollars.
Well, I don't know whether this will help at all, but I know that Amanda wanted us to ask for our entire reimbursement from July 1 to present. She was trying to work on that at City Council. So, and that's, I think, sort of what we were thinking about. And because I'll tell you what, let me give you a good example. If we don't get reimbursed starting with the July 1 quarter, and we just started now, let's say in January, it would wipe out our entire savings, because that's what we've been using. If they reimburse us in full, we get to put the money that we've used in the last couple of months back into the operations, and we'll have savings once again for a rainy day. So I'm happy to talk about this with you, Dawn, but I was under the impression that they were actually thinking about returning the funding to us in full.
Well, I wouldn't make that assumption, given you got a whole new council and there's a lot of water under the bridge, and we haven't done 100% of staff doing the. We
don't make the assumption. I'm telling you what I told.
So technically our funding has been approved fully, right? It's just whether or not it's going to be distributed, right?
Right.
So
that's right, Teddy.
if they were to modify that, it would have to go back in front of council again to change the funding levels. So it really would depend on how the council chooses to handle that. But technically, I mean, the right thing to do would be to fund us based on July 1 to present, which would not just take us back to our savings level of 80-something odd thousand, but would actually take us beyond that, right? Because of our, we've been operating at less than 100% for a few months here, right? Which is good, and we can decide how we want to use that extra money, whether it's just to put it back in funding or to really fund some additional projects along the way.
The point I'm trying to say is you need to have these in your pocket so that when you sit down to talk with the right people, whoever's doing that, you're not fumbling around trying to say, oh, that makes sense. And then you realize, oh, later I forgot about this or that or the other thing.
Right.
Think through this and have a negotiating plan that says, here's our opening card, opening card. If I were the city, I'd say, wait a minute, you only did 80% service or 60% service. So we ought to cut that back a little bit because we're giving you excess savings. Trying to say that if there's people there that are thinking about this from the city's perspective, and I think there's a few people down there that do, we're not going to be able to get the full cap that we're asking for. So we need to have good arguing positions that says this is negotiation you're going through A, B, C, D, and be able to justify that on the fly as you're talking with them, because it's probably going to be a sit down, talk to in about 2 hours and you're done. That's my expectation.
I appreciate that, Don, and I'm sure Teddy does too. And we will address it here over the Christmas holidays. Okay, Teddy, do you want to move on to cash flow?
Yes, let's move on.
So we had to put in a revised just before 5 o'clock here. This is the November at level here. This was our actuals that we're halfway through December. So I wanted to update the numbers, and then Nancy updated January and February. There's less actual days that you get paid in January and February, so it's going to be a little bit less there. And I think in the other one that we had the 230 here for incorporation fees over in December, we actually paid it, and it's in our reports as to in November. So
you want to talk about the highlights, Teddy?
Yes, I was going to get there. Any questions briefly before just shooting through the highlights? If you could scroll up to the top, Celia, that'd be great. Or is it?
Okay, I see Mike Lindman's got a question and Patty has a question. So Mike, let me go ahead and ask you first. What's your question?
Yeah, I don't want to get us too off topic, but I think I want to kind of reaffirm what Don was saying in the standpoint that, like, whether or not we're going to get everything back, we need to be able to make a compelling ask. Like, we're not going to get, I think it's going to be difficult for them to get everything. If you even look at what Commissioner Daly's request was, it was for what was going forward, not looking back. And I think that we need to actually have hard numbers of specifically for what our staff missed out on. So we need to have a hard accounting of exactly how much less our staff made during the time that we were without. And we need to be able to show that in detail. So that's including, like, even though we were cut back to 60%, what money we got from Workforce Oregon or what our workers got from Workforce or anything else, so that we can show this is how much our staff normally got paid. This is what they actually got paid. And so this is why we're asking, I would like to hope that we're asking to try to make them whole, because they were kind of beat up in this whole process. But we need to have those numbers. And I think to reaffirm to Dawn is that I know that it's a lot of work, but it would be nice as members of the board to be able to see what that request is once it's put together, regardless of whether or not it's been asked for by city council yet. So the sooner that we're done with that and the sooner that the entire board can see it, I think would be highly recommended. Even if we're not having an official meeting to talk about it, it's still good for all of us to know exactly what the ask was before January 27th.
All right, so I think the initial response to that would be the request will be for full funding, right? And the city will come back with whether it's a yes, we're approving full funding, or it's a no, we're funding you at X level, and then we can go back with to say, we agree or disagree with that. We may not be in a position to really negotiate that.
And I don't think we're going to be able to negotiate it, Teddy, which is why I think that we have to be able to show all of our work from the get-go. Because I think we can't assume that number, and I think we have to show all the work. And I think getting it out to the rest of the board so that everybody else can have a chance to look at it to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And I'm not questioning anything you guys are doing, because I think you're doing a good job. But I think more sets of eyes on it, the better, considering the amount of eyes that are on us as an association currently altogether.
Okay, very good point. going to call on Patty. Patty, did you want to make a comment or ask a question?
I have a question, but I also wanted to comment. I agree with Don and Mike. But you said something that I guess maybe I missed it. We're going in, what are we, okay, has our funding for the year been approved? I thought we were waiting on a contingency for the audit, you know, successful audit. And so I guess that's my question. What are we really talking about? Are we going in to plead that, hey, we're successful, give us the whole contract? Or are we, I don't know what we're doing.
Question for you about the status of the contract. Go ahead, Sylvia.
Well, Teddy said it. The ordinance that was passed on July 9th approved full funding for us pending the completion of a forensic audit. That's all we have in writing on the ordinance.
Right.
So it was approval of full funding, but
yes,
I don't think people thought it would take this long, 6 months.
Right. I mean, that's essentially what City Council will be bringing back to the table to vote on, unless there's an amendment to that, and we don't know what that amendment might look like. We could, in the new year, have a conversation with staff in the various councilmen's office, but
right,
we can have a discussion. But I mean, sure, what we know today, the vote will be to take up the previous vote and say they passed the audit or did not pass the audit, and that's it. All right.
Okay, that was kind of my understanding, is we're going back to them to say, hey, look, our thing was pending a successful audit. Okay, was it successful or not? And then if that is the decision it was, we get our grant for the full year. But then they may say, and is this the discussion then that, well, wait a minute, it is for the full year, but we want to give you only half or something, and then we have to argue that. But what we're going in, honestly, is what I think we're doing is the audit was successful and we're requesting the full grant. Isn't that?
I mean, I think we're sort of splitting hairs here and really make an argument over things that we really don't have that much input or control over at the moment. The next vote will be, we believe will be, is the audit satisfactory? Will we then amend the previous vote to then fund SWNI? And the funding at that level would be the full funding for the year as voted upon in that council meeting. And that's that. There wouldn't be a discussion on 80% of that funding or 50% of that funding. It's just, it would be, you've used your savings and you've made it through however you got it done. But here's the money that you would have received for those 6 months, plus the rest of the year, right?
Okay.
That's my expectation of what will happen. Now, there could be changes, as City Council always has the right to amend that agreement based on our contractual agreement. But as of now, that's what we're working with. There's certainly unknown unknowns and known unknowns, but that's it. That's what we have to work with.
Teddy, because we're running late, I'm going to ask everybody who has their hand up to write their questions in and send it to Sylvia. And then we can look at those and take those into consideration as we're working on these numbers. Teddy's exactly right. We don't know what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. We know what our status of our contract is. So to have more discussions about who will do what and when and all that kind of thing, the Finance Committee will work on this. And if we get a couple of projections done, I'm sure we'd be happy to send them out to the board members to take a look at. So Teddy, we need to move on to the
Leslie, just one thing that's really important. You know, you're assuming that we're going to be dealing with the accountants, and the key thing here is to negotiate with the principal. So when the Bureau commissioner in charge, we need to set up a meeting with them and go through and negotiate this. That's my view of it.
Well, I agree with you, Don. We're in complete agreement. I agree with you completely.
We need to prepare that letter.
We need to move on. I can't take
Yes,
any
I'd
more.
like to call the orders of the day. We spent a lot of time.
Disruptive, Rob. I'm not going to call in any more people on this issue. We need to move on to the cash flow projections because we've got a motion for the board to consider, 2 more motions for the board to consider. So Teddy, do you want to finish up what you want to say about the cash flow projections for January so we can bring a motion back to the board?
Yeah, so what I was just mentioning that we have enough money to fund staff at 60%, and that would be my recommendation to the board. And
do we have a second for Teddy's motion to approve paying staff at 60% in January? Do we have a second?
On here, second.
Okay, Don's second. Is there any discussion on the issue of whether we have enough money to do this on January? Do we have any discussion on paying staff in January? I see 2 hands up. Tatiana, do you have a comment or suggestion on paying staff in January? Because that's what we're working on.
It's not directly on staff, paying staff in, but I am amazed that you guys do not realize loud and clear that until the audit questions are answered, no one is going to approve any of your funding. They have an administrative latitude to withhold it as long as possible. And all your guesses here are just silly. What you need to show is that you are ready to evolve to a new formula.
Thank you. I'm sure that we can do that. Javier, you can, you have your hand up. Do you want to comment on the vote for the approving the payroll for January?
Thanks, Leslie. No, sorry, I was just left over from the previous discussion about strategy and that kind of stuff, and it's been tabled, so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, all right. All right, Janet, do you want to call the roll on this particular motion?
Right. This motion is to maintain our staffing at 60% level in January. So I'll call the roll call vote. I vote supports that. Steve Mullinex.
Yes.
Sam Pearson.
Yes.
Teddy O.
yes.
Janet is a yes. Katie Daly.
Yes.
Becky Lilliquist. I'll come back to Becky. Might be a problem with unmuting.
I don't see her, but I don't see her in the list right now.
Okay. Fran Laird.
Yes.
Tony Hansen.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Kendall.
Yes.
Tatiana.
I don't know how we can afford it, but yes, sure, why not?
Okay. Jackie Phillips.
Yes.
Claire Carter.
She's here.
Yes.
Good, Claire.
Yes, thank you, Claire. Michael Charles.
Yes.
Maria Timai.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, thank you. Rob Lennox.
Yes.
Charlie Van Rossen.
Yes.
Javier.
No.
Diane Victoria.
Yes.
Gary Rundy.
Yes.
Mike Lindman.
Yes.
Kim Silverman.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Patty McMahon.
Yes.
Catherine Christensen.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
And Don Baack.
Yes.
Great. Motion passes, 1 abstention, 1 no.
Okay, Teddy, do you want to talk about the independent fiscal control examination and how we'd like to demonstrate to City Council that we're willing to do things differently and in the coming new year. Do you want to talk about it from that point of view?
Yes, so we've got, Leslie, maybe, if you can remind me of her name.
Her name is Colleen Yoshihara.
Yeah, so Colleen is volunteered to, well, Colleen's got over a decade of experience with the county, correct?
That's right.
Doing audits, and she's a CPA, and she's offered to do an audit of 2019 and 2020, focusing on those years, and give us some, and do it for limited audit to help us understand where we could improve things, what any sort of risk she sees, and whether it's a process side or financial issues that she sees, and give us some suggestion of things to do to improve. Now, this isn't a rebuttal of the audit, but just taking efforts to see how we can improve as an organization, from our financial controls and just general operations. So she's offered to do that, and we're asking the board for their vote in support of having that effort done for us, and then we'll come back to the board with when she's completed, and look to see where we can make changes and make improvements to our organization.
So I'm going to call on Sylvia, and then I'm going to call on Charlie, and then Diane. So Sylvia first.
So just to correct a couple of things. One, she's not doing an audit. She is doing a fiscal control examination. So looking at our controls and
Yes.
what's working, what's not working. So it's very important to say that.
I use it loosely in the way that Marcia used it.
I just want to make sure people are clear. It's a fiscal control examination. And two, she is retired. So she's, I think she's been retired for 6 years.
Right.
So she's not
currently a CPA, but she's
not a licensed CPA right now. She is retired. Yeah. So using her skill. Those are the main things I wanted to make sure people understood.
Right. So the word audit, forget it. It's fiscal control examination. She's going to measure what our financial policies are and our processes are for managing our money. And then she's going to test it against some transactions that occurred in 2019 and 2020 and provide a report to us that says what we could do better, what we might be doing well, and what things don't need touching because they're in good shape. It's independent. It's designed to help us look at our financial controls and improve them as they need to be improved.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, this is kind of in line with what Councilwoman Fritz mentioned earlier, and making some efforts into having some somewhat regular either audit or review of what we're doing and how we can improve as an organization.
Okay, Diane, Victoria, then Mike Lindman, then Jackie. Go ahead, Diane. Go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. My question is there a fee for this? And if so, how would we ever pay for it?
Teddy, do you want
She's volunteering to do this
for free?
And she has worked as a CPA, but is no longer a licensed CPA, because there is a difference.
Yeah, she's retired, so she hasn't kept her license up. But that was what she did in her professional career.
Okay.
Okay, Mike Lindman.
My first question is, how was she found?
Patty McMahon knew her and told her about SWNI. She used to live in the Southwest neighborhood. She now lives out in West Lynn. And when she heard about the city audit, she started thinking about ways that she might help SWNI because of her professional background. And she asked Patty to contact us to ask if she could help by doing this independent fiscal control examination.
Okay, and then my second question would be, do we have plans? And I understand that this is helpful because I think this needs to happen, to have a current CPA that we actually pay to do a full audit once we actually have the money to afford said thing. Because I don't think that it's going to be good enough with the city, frankly. I think this is a good interim step when we basically don't have any money, but I don't think that the city is going to just take a voluntary fiscal control, you know, no matter what her, and I'm not questioning her background in any respect, but like, we're going to need to cross our, yet again, it's dot the I's and cross the T's kind of thing. So I think we need to have that in mind for like further examination once funding returns.
The one thing I will say is I was asked sometime last week by one of the commissioner's office if SWNI would be agreeable to do an audit once we had funding for it. And my answer was an enthusiastic yes. It's not in our contract right now. Audits are encouraged, but it isn't a requirement of contracting with a city. So my intuition, Mike, is that if and when they restore our funding, part of the contract for controls will be that we do go through an audit, but it's more than likely they'll give us the money to do that. That's what's been inferred to me.
Okay, I mean, I think instead of it being inferred, I think we're the ones who need to be requesting that. I think that needs to be part of our ask because that shows us being proactive.
Very good point. Thank you. Jackie, you're next.
Yes, I agree very much with what Mike just said, both his points. I do strongly agree that SWNI needs to go forward with an audit as soon as funding is restored. And how much time does this person plan to take to do their work?
Well, essentially, given all the materials that she would have to read, like financial policies and then our procedures for how we manage the payment of monies, how we receive monies and how we distribute it, she thought, and then tested against a number of transactions in 2019 and 2020, she thought she could get a solid report that was fact-based done in about 2 weeks. Patty, I see your.
Am I unmuted? Okay. I just wanted to comment about Colleen's background. She was hired by Multnomah County to set up their compliance contract program. She set that up and managed that for 10 years. And that is the job that she retired from 4 years ago from Multnomah County. The city of Portland, as I understand it, does not have a compliance contract program. And for the type of work that she does and is doing for us, it doesn't require a CPA. It is more of a contract performance. And Charlie, you could address this. But so what I wanted to say is the nature of that contract compliance program that she did for Multnomah County for 10 years, City of Portland doesn't have such a thing. And so what it entailed was going out and monitoring, auditing the nonprofit organizations that Multnomah County does contract work with. That's essentially what it does. It included the fiscal, program management. So they would go out and interview, do these examinations. I think in their role, though, it was called an audit there. Her piece would be an examination. But anyway, and so the city of Portland doesn't have such a program, still don't, and they would rely on Multnomah County's audits, let me call them audits, when they are requesting contractors. So what they would do is they would have, the city of Portland would say, what audits have you had done recently? State of Oregon, whatever it may be, Multnomah County was also one of them. And so they, instead of setting up their own program, since these nonprofits in the Portland area are the same nonprofits, they utilized what her team developed. So I just wanted to clarify, it was sounding like maybe she didn't have any background. This is exactly what she set up for Multnomah County and ran it for 10 years.
Okay, Tatiana, I see your hand is up.
I wanted to say that we're going down more rabbit holes. Amanda just told you that the city council really is not, if you don't believe me, Amanda told you that the city council is not concerned about the quality of this audit. They're interested in how you can evolve into a different model of relationship with the neighborhoods and representing them with the city.
Well,
And you are continuing, and you are continuing the same down the same rabbit hole.
well, this is this is
No,
about
Teddy, this is Teddy's presentation.
so-
Go ahead, Teddy.
Tatiana, this isn't about rebutting the audit or going down any particular rabbit hole about that, the Marshminnick report. This is really, I mean, I think this is actually complementary to Amanda's statements in that we're saying, okay, we know we can do better. We know there are places we can improve.
They're not interested in these Band-Aids. They're not interested in these Band-Aids. I wish somebody would hear the wisdom. I'm not trying to, be argumentative or destroy anything. I have a tremendous amount of experience in this area. All I'm trying to do is offer a very valuable advice, but nobody seems to want to listen to it or hear it. You seem to continue along the same lines.
Can you give us an example, Tatiana, of what you're meaning? Do you have suggestions that we can begin?
I do. I have a whole initiative proposal for a new model of a structure of a community-based organization that I believe you should become and the city is looking for. They're really not concerned about the financial aspects so much.
I want to raise a point of order here.
Fine. Well, I'm just answering the question.
Okay.
No need to raise a point of order. I'll just shut up.
Your comments are well taken, Tatiana. We will come back to them. George, you have a question. Go ahead, George.
Does anyone really have any idea? January is going to be very busy for the mayor with a new term and the council with new members. When do you expect the new council to be assigned the various organizations that they will have as their interest? When might we get to know who will be the council person who's going to be in control of civic life? And this should affect who we write letters to and who we need to get to know better and all these other kinds of things. And I think a lot of what Tatiana is saying is very vital. It's very important stuff that you need to, we need to address the complaints that they had, which was they had what the audit showed. We need to, but we need to know who to placate and who to charm. Are we charming Hardesty or are we charming Mingus Maps or are we charming Ryan? I don't really know.
Mayor.
George, let me share with you, in another neighborhood meeting to which I went, and Amanda was there, she said the person who will manage the Office of Community and Civic Life is likely to be revealed on the 2nd of January. So until then, I don't think we'll have any idea of whom we should be addressing anything to. That is what she said in another meeting. And that's all the information that we have to point that I know. Okay, Javier, you have your hand up. You have a question?
Point of order was called. I retract my hand. Sorry, I'm not getting good at putting my hand down. I'm sorry, taking it down.
Oh, okay, all right.
Sorry.
You've been waiting patiently to comment. Would you like to comment? Charlie
Who?
Van Ross.
Oh, thank you. You broke up. I didn't hear you. I'd like to say that having this examination done by Colleen is more a quiver or an arrow in our quiver than it is going down a rabbit hole, just because it's not going to cost anything. And she's going to be able to look at our policies and procedures, see if there are any gaps or weaknesses or issues that need to be addressed, and make suggestions. And I think that'll be beneficial, even if we don't give whatever she produces to anyone.
Okay, last question, and then we're going to have a motion and vote on this one way or the other. Don, you have the last comment.
Thank you. I just really want to support getting on with this. I think it's, as Charlie says, it's not the most important thing in the world, but it's a good thing to do. It's not going to cost anything. It can be done quickly. And if someone does raise the questions, we've got the answers that we can provide. Let's vote.
All right. Okay. Janet, do you want to call the roll call on approving?
Leslie, do we have the motion on this?
Teddy, do you want to make the motion?
I motion to approve to allow, is it Colleen? Is that her name?
Yes, Colleen Yoshihara.
Colleen Yoshihara to provide her volunteer services to review our operations.
Through the use of fiscal control examination. Right. It's the magic word, fiscal control examination.
Fiscal control examination.
Don Baack, second.
Did you second, Don?
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right. Janet, do you want to call the roll?
Yes, I'll call the roll. Starting with Steve Molinex.
Yeah, I believe this responds directly to the concerns raised in the audit that did not have good financial controls, and I vote yes.
Yes. Sam Pearson.
Yes.
And Teddy.
Yes.
And Janet, I'm a yes. Katie Daly.
Jane.
Thank you. And I think Becky Lilliquist has left the call, I believe. So it'll be Fran Laird.
Yes.
Yeah, Fran, you're a yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Tony Hansen
Yes.
and George Branos.
George?
George.
Yes. Am I muted?
No, you're fine. No, thank you.
Were you a yes, George?
He was a yes.
Yes, I'm a yes.
Okay, thanks. Kendall?
Yes.
Tatiana?
I think we're fighting for survival, not luxury audits. I vote no.
And Jackie Phillips?
Well, I'm very interested in what Tatiana has to say, and I hope that gets passed along to us soon. With that being said, and because it's costing us no money, and because the results are going to be inconsequential because she's a CPA that is not licensed, I'll go ahead and vote yes.
Thank you. Claire Carter?
Yes.
Mike Charles?
Yes.
Okay. Maria Timai?
I'm going to vote yes, but with the caveat that I don't know that this is the best investment of our time.
Robert Lennox?
I also question timing, but I think it's a duty of the board and of us to review our controls all the time. So yes.
Okay, thank you. Charlie Van Rossen
Yes.
and Javier.
Yeah, I feel this is a direct response to quality control, so absolutely yes.
Okay. Diane Victoria.
Yes.
Gary Rundy.
Yes, and I'd also like to hear some time down the road here what Tatiana is talking about.
Thank you. Mike Lindman?
I vote yes. I think this is a good first step in addressing questions of fiscal control, but I think this is only the first step. I think there's going to be more that needs to be done in the future, but a good first step. So yes.
Great, thanks. Kim Silverman?
Yes.
Patty McMahon?
Yes.
Catherine Christensen? Okay. Murphy?
Yes, and I would like to hear more about other ideas down the line too. Thank you.
Great. And Don Baack?
Yes.
Great. Motion passes. We had one abstention and one no vote.
All right. The next thing on our agenda is Executive Director's Report. Sylvia, with your permission, I'd like to bypass your report for the moment and move right into executive session so the board has a chance to review the recommendations on the first grievance that we had. Is that all right with you, Sylvia?
Yes.
All right. Board, I'm going to move us
Jackie, do
into.
you need to leave? I see Jackie's, yeah. Jackie, I think you're muted.
I need to leave now.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry to put you. I'm sorry it took so long, but it just does sometimes. Okay, so we're going to move into executive session. That means Lee and Steve need to put our guests in a waiting room and that we keep our board members. And then while they're doing that, Sylvia will read the rules about how executive sessions work, just to remind all of us.
So we're moving into executive session per the Civic Life Standards, Article 5, Section D2, which allows the board to meet in executive session to deliberate towards a decision, and especially in terms of consideration of grievances and approval of our executive session minutes. So I don't think we have any news representatives here tonight, but they would be allowed to stay, but not report on anything that they hear. And all board members that are here are asked to keep these deliberations confidential and not speak of them outside of the board meeting here. So, and again, if we have a decision, we need to come outside of executive session for the dispute resolution and then vote on it in regular session. But we can discuss it now.
Okay, Sam, do you want to lead this session off and then turn it over to the committee chair?
Yes. I'm sorry, we need to make sure that we have.
Oh, right.
Okay.
not-
Is Joyce, who's Joyce? She stay or move to the waiting room?
To the waiting room, I believe.
Okay.
Sorry, I stepped away. Was I supposed to leave the room?
Joyce is supposed to leave the room, but we'll call you back as soon as the deliberation is over.
Let me get out of here. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, Fran stays, right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay, Tony stays.
Scott McLean, we have to invite to the waiting room. Scott McLean.
Okay, will do.
And then I don't see, everybody else I see, at least on the participants list, is a board member or a chair up on the board.
And Leslie, we need to quit recording at this point too.
We are, okay. Does the grievance committee have a motion to put before the entire board?
I move that the board accept the committee report as written.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, George seconded. Any further discussion?
Yes, at this time, it also is necessary that there be a letter written by the executive explaining the reason for the resolution committee's decision and the board's decision.
Okay, so Janet, do you want to call the roll on approving the recommendations that came out of the grievance committee with direction to the executive to write a letter to the
Right,
parties?
Yes, this is a motion to accept the report of the SWNI Dispute Resolution Committee as presented. And I'll call the roll. Steve Mullinex,
Yes.
Sam Pearson,
I'm going to abstain because I was running this.
okay, Teddy O. Is Teddy still on the call?
I'm looking. Maybe call the next people. I'll look.
Okay, this is Janet. I'm voting yes. Katie Daly.
Yes.
Okay. Becky Lilliquist has left the meeting. Fran Laird.
Yes.
Okay. Tony Hansen.
Is it proper for committee members to vote, or should
Yeah.
we abstain?
No, I think it's proper.
Okay, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
George Branos.
Yes.
Okay. Kendall Kick. Kendall still on the call?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Yes, indeed.
Tatiana, I think, Tatiana, are you with us? I think it's an abstention. Is that?
Right.
I mean, I don't even know what we're talking about. I have to abstain. I'm sorry.
Claire Carter? Is Claire still on the call?
Yes, she is.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Mike Charles?
Yes.
Maria T. Mai?
Yes.
And Robert Lennox?
Yes.
And we have Charlie Van Rossen.
Yes.
Okay. Javier?
Yes.
Great. Two answers there. Diane Victoria. Hi, Diane Victoria.
Yes.
Gary Rundy.
Yes.
Mike Lindman.
Yes.
And Kim Silverman.
Yes.
And Patty McMahon.
Yes.
Catherine Christensen.
Yes.
And Murphy.
Yes.
Okay. And Don Baack. Does Don abstain? Don's on the Hillsdale board, so.
Yeah, he would abstain.
Is Don on the call?
I don't think so.
I don't see him.
Okay. So motion is approved with 2 abstentions.
Okay, and Teddy's not on the call either.
No, yeah, Teddy was not on the call.
Okay. So the motion to approve the recommendations is accepted. Now it's 9:30 and we don't have time sensitive issues still remaining on the agenda. So there's a couple of things. Do you wish to move the remainder of our agenda over to January, to the first special meeting or regular meeting that we have? Or do you want to continue? And one of the things that has been suggested is that Tatiana would like to talk about her ideas about how the board might go forward differently in the future. I would like to suggest to the board that we set up a Zoom meeting and invite everybody who wants to listen to those ideas at a separate time rather than doing it tonight because it is so late, but it's up to the board. If you want to adjourn, we should have a motion to adjourn. If you want to continue, then we shouldn't have a motion to adjourn.
I move that we table the rest of the agenda to next month's meeting and adjourn.
I
Is
second.
there, okay, George is seconding. Okay.
Leslie, can I
Yes.
just say really quickly that I mean, I think this is fine. I think that we want to make sure that we have that meeting for Tatiana's recommendations sooner rather than later.
Right. Does everybody agree that that's a good idea?
Very good.
Yes, let's try and get that on the agenda, please.
Okay.
It sounds like Tatiana has something written. Can she distribute it so we can review it prior
Yeah.
to the?
7 days in
Well,
advance.
I was hoping that I would be given an opportunity to explain a little bit before I circulate, or while I circulated, because I've written a bare skeleton, but I do have very valuable information from reliable sources as to what needs to be done. And I'm sorry if I sound too aggravating, but I have the best interest at stake in my view for SWNI
Well, why don't we do this? Sylvia and I will look at the calendar and what she's got. We have people that are at 60% of their work time. We have people taking vacations. So let's see if we can find some time next week and then invite everybody to a time that would work, first of all, for Tatiana, Sylvia, and then for the rest of you as well. How does that sound? Sylvia?
Yes, thank you.
I would
Sylvia?
like to suggest we still have a second grievance, and we need to hear from that dispute resolution committee. If we could move that to a next agenda along with Tatiana's.
Right.
So we combine those as a special meeting.
Sylvia, they haven't finished their work. The second grievance committee hasn't finished their work.
Yes, but I believe they're winding it up.
No, not
It
at the
would be good
present
to-
time.
No? Okay.
All right. So if they should, we will. Okay. So we'll work on finding a time next week where everybody can be invited to listen to ideas that everybody has about how they'd like to see things going forward. And then we have a motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
I guess I
Anybody?
do. I've had my hand up and I just wanted to say something.
Ken?
All right, Katie, I didn't see you. I'm sorry. What do you want to say?
I know there's so many people. I just want to make sure that we have an opportunity to discuss the forensic audit as a board rather than individual sidebars. And I believe it would provide a wonderful context for what Tatiana has to suggest. So
No,
if we could include that.
audit is not my context. Audit, the council doesn't want to hear about the audit. I'm sorry to interrupt, Katie.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you for making that suggestion. We'll see what we can do. But Amanda was very clear. She didn't think we should spend any more time on that as such. But she did want us to spend time on what we might do a little differently than we're doing in the future. So I have a vote on the adjournment, and so we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for staying so late.
Thank you.
Did a great job listening all the way through. Much
Thank you,
appreciated.